There's no real best practice anymore.
Yes.
If anyone tells you there is, they're lying. The data feed was horrendous. It was set up by an IT consultant 10 years prior to me joining.
Wow.
So now it's actually about, okay, what's actually going to make a difference for a business? And then the next step to that is, okay, which one of these are more important for us? And actually, how do we tell Google which ones are a bigger priority than the others?
We're going to be talking a lot about PPC, paid media in general. You've got a really interesting and vast amount of experience in the field across kind of agencies, big agencies, small agencies, big companies, startups. So really kind of interested to dig into, I guess, like your experience, but also like your take on the world of paid media and how it's changed and how kind of not necessarily the approach, but how your view on things might have changed between those different businesses as well.
Yeah, sure. So I started in, I'd say, probably 2012. And back then, you used to split your campaigns by tablet, mobile, desktop.
Properly granular.
Yep. And there was no such thing as automated bidding. So you would do the manual bids on 3 types of campaigns for the same campaign, essentially, across how those devices perform. So that's when I started. And then Google released a new change, which was big news at the time, called enhanced campaigns, which is more like the regular search campaigns that you get today, where you could no longer split by device. You had to combine the two, and you had to use a bid modifier to change your tablet and mobile bids. Initially, you couldn't actually change your tablet bids. You had to just you could change your mobile, but not tablet. Basically, Google claimed that tablet was the same as desktop in terms of performance, which was just strictly not true.
Not the case at all,
But they eventually changed that after all the controversy. But so when I first started, that was like Greenlight's small search independent agency at the time. We spent a lot of time converging our campaigns, but still with a granular approach where you'd essentially have, I guess it was in the era of single keyword ad groups, SKAGs. Keywords, every ad group, every theme possible, every campaign, every variation you can think of in exact match. And then you use broad match, phrase match, DSAs to try and clean up the rest.
Yes.
So huge accounts, like hundreds, if not thousands of campaigns, even for the smallest of clients. So I stepped into RS Components as a digital advertising manager. It was an interesting one because I've always been the sort of person that I don't like going into a situation where everything's already done very well. In that sense, I don't feel like I'll add much value to that.
So you like parachuting in?
Yeah, I'm not a person that will just constantly drive those incremental gains, those marginal gains. Like, it'll get to a point, obviously, wherever you are, you have to focus on those to win. But when I start a new role, there has to be a challenge behind it. So RS Components at the time, so this was probably going back to when I joined about 2017. They were a company that did all their activity in-house. They didn't really have any specialists running it. They had people from various parts of the organization that got put into PPC because they didn't really have anywhere else to go in that sense. They had a bid management tool they didn't even use. They used it for reporting. They didn't use it for any bid management. They were still doing manual bidding in 2017, where everyone had moved on to
starting to like automated bidding. Really kicking in at that point.
So automated bidding was pretty much, but certainly at agency side, everyone was running ROAS, sort of target ROAS, target CPA for a good couple of years by this point, a good 2-3 years. So
it was like
coming back to 2013 in a sense.
Wow. Okay. And then on to Ufurnish.
So there's a few things before Ufurnish actually. So I was at RS for about 4.5 years. That's the longest job I've ever had in my career. It doesn't sound that long, but certainly in digital it probably is.
Why was it the longest? What was it about that job that...
So it's always about, for me, the challenge. Once I've got to a point where there isn't much more growth in terms of my development, but also in terms of the development of the accounts, the business in terms of PPC or whatever I'm working on, I start thinking, okay, what's next? At RS, there was always a new challenge, being a FTSE 100 company, 6,000 people across the globe. I initially started as a digital advertising manager, but then I got moved into a more of an automation role, so performance marketing technology. Where my sole focus was bid management, looking at new channels like display, bringing in a DSP, setting up an affiliate network for RS, being a B2B company. Stepping into the affiliate space was quite scary, but it worked really well actually. But all these new things, shopping feeds as well. The data feed was horrendous. It was set up by an IT consultant 10 years prior to me joining.
Wow.
Never been touched. No one knew how to optimize it.
What extent of the product, like how big was that product catalog?
Millions of products.
Humongous,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
On all like parts and part numbers and
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can imagine.
The next question is all about so since 2012, specialist agency, then into a big media agency, then into a big B2B business, then startup. A lot has changed in that time in terms of PPC. And I guess a lot is different there in terms of your experience with running PPCs. So how do you feel, like first off, what would you say the biggest changes are in your mind? Do you prefer it now? Do you prefer it then? How do you see that world of change? I'm trying to straighten up this cushion, sorry.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think back then it was all about what's best practice and then just relentlessly relying on best practice to squeeze as much efficiency and performance out of the accounts as possible. Didn't really think too much about, business profitability and, customer acquisition, those sort of things. It's all about ROAS, return or CPA, how can we get these metrics as efficient as possible through, basically almost gamifying PPC in terms of, these structures work, these don't, building things out as much as possible. And now it's more about there's far fewer levers you can pull to gain those efficiencies.
Yeah.
So now it's actually about, okay, what's actually going to make a difference for a business?
Yeah.
And then think about, okay, how should this account look like? There's no real best practice anymore.
Yes.
If anyone tells you there is, they're lying, because it's just, we've only just started heavily investing in PMAX as an industry. It's only in the last year, I'd say, it's become accepted as this is where we have to be.
Totally.
So there is no best practice, and Google are taking away things that you could determine as best practice because so much is in a black box. So it's all about, okay, what's important to this business? How can I get data that can prove this is growing and isn't? And how do I feed that data to Google to be able to optimize to?
Yeah.
That's all it is. And that's going to be different for any business you work for.
Do you like where it is at now with PMAX and, is so heavily automated? Do you like that, or do you miss the kind of the days of, manually constructing a big account and then manually bidding on terms and manually adding negatives and manually doing everything? Like, what do you prefer?
I think the nerd in me does miss those days.
Yeah.
It's you feel like you're adding more value as a PPC practitioner.
Yeah. Also,
like a specialist in this.
Yeah. The sense of satisfaction of manually building out a really beautiful account structure I don't know. You do that and you've achieved something just by building it. I don't know.
Yeah.
That I miss.
But at the same time, I think now it's all about what is going to get growth for businesses, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Google.
Yeah.
It can be Facebook, it can be TikTok. It completely depends on the business you work on.
Yep.
What those objectives are, and understanding that first and foremost, I think, is quite exciting.
Yeah, and that's a real positive, isn't it? I mean, I was having a conversation with someone yesterday about the same sort of thing, and due to lack of cookies and or changes in cookies and tracking and attribution and all the rest of it, they just almost ended up bypassing web analytics and were working directly with the finance department. And you're like, that's how it should be. And you're like, have we just been going round in these weird circles, and we're now just getting to the point where everyone's just forced to think a bit bigger? Like, it's not necessarily what's the CPA on that exact keyword. It's, is this making any difference to the business and the bottom line? If so, great. Let's try and understand why and do more of that. But that's a good thing, isn't it?
It is a good thing, and it's all about the data. And one of the few levers you can pull is the creative today. And although obviously with PMAX and Advantage Plus campaigns in Facebook, it's kind of like, give us the data of these are the images you have, and then we'll construct the ad for you. But you still have to provide those initial images for it to understand what to put together to work. So that's where the creativity comes into PPC today, in terms of how do I drive more efficiency? How do I drive more performance? It's what data can I provide, whether that be images, videos, text, whatever, or things like offline conversions. How do I make sure it understands what a real conversion is for us?
It is a very different job, isn't it? You know, if you're talking about where it was versus where it is now, and the fact that you really have to understand how to format the right data to put into the platform, and how does this AI and automation work, and what do I need to do to feed that beast with the right information? That's totally different to building out some, single keyword ad groups and knocking the ones off that aren't working. And it's a different job, isn't it?
So we initially, as I mentioned, when I first laid my hands on this account, it was all about how can I get clicks as efficiently as possible. That's clicking out to retailer as much as possible. Now, those micro conversions I talked to you about before, about people signing up for an account, newsletter, clicked on a product. These are all things we're feeding into Google as a conversion point. And then the next step to that is, okay, which one of these are more important for us? And actually, how do we tell Google which ones are a bigger priority than the others?
Yeah.
So the way we've done it is we've created fake values for them. So let's say someone who's clicked on a product is worth £1. Someone who's clicked to a retailer is worth £2. Someone who's clicked on a product, favorited product, that they're worth £3, whatever that may be, and then have a ROAS goal for that. So it's not ROAS for this is the revenue we're making. It's ROAS for drive more of these conversions because it's more important. But we still want it to optimize to the other conversions too. But don't weight those too favorably.
Have you found that's worked in terms of prioritization? Because we've seen that work really nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think if Google didn't have that view, it would look at what's converting as much as possible, no matter which conversion it was. And then it would just heavily weight all your budget towards that. And that's not necessarily going to drive growth.
Do the right job.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Definitely. What would to wrap up, let's say someone's listening to this episode and they're working in a startup and they're running paid media. What would your one biggest piece of advice be for them?
Build your networks. So find out who are the thought leaders in this space. How do you get access to, to those people, whether it be industry events, networking opportunities. There's a great organization out there called PPC Live. So if you work in PPC and paid social, to be fair, they run like quarterly events where they get some big speakers in to chat, and then everyone huddles together after with a few beers, pizza and that sort of stuff to just have a chat. And I've spoken there. I've attended as an attendee a few times as well. And the people that you meet across agency and client side and at all levels, so junior level to senior levels, it does strike a lot of conversations.
Fantastic.
Then you have someone that you can talk to about something, especially if you work in a small organisation where you don't have people you can talk to. You have a network.
So important.
It's like, as you mentioned before, this thing's happened. Is it just my account, or is an industry trend or not?
Yeah. That's great piece of advice. Also, not being afraid to go and just chat to people at the bar at those things, because that's where you get that's where the gold is.
Yeah,
that's where all the new friendships are, the new relationships, the support, it's like just getting stuck in. And
people tell you the truth at these sort of things as well. There's no marketing spiel about it. People are very upfront about what's going on.
Perfect. Well, look, Indi, thank you so much for coming all the way from Cambridge to do this. It was great fun, and thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
Cheers.